Welcome back to Alpha Bowhunting. I'm Phil Mendoza. In today's clip, we got one of my favorite aiming drills. Check it out. Although that is one of my favorite aiming drills for my young boys, it's not necessarily the right place for that. So let's get right into the actual archery related aiming drills. All right, so in a previous video I talked about building confidence and helping your archery game right from the get-go, from when you start shooting your bow, the first few arrows. And just to recap that, it was shooting a handful of arrows without up close, not even looking at your sight, just focusing on the execution. And then at that point, you're going to add a very close distance shot, a handful of shots, high percentage shots, to get you in the right mindset. This is something you can do and integrate into that warm-up process. And what I like to do is, sometimes before you even take those shots, those first shots where you start to aim, this is a good spot to maybe plug it in. And what I like to do is I like to get a really small dot, something like this. This is about a 3/4 inch dot that I'll stick at my target at 10 yards or 15 yards. Right before I take those high percentage shots, I'll draw back and I'll just aim, and I'll just work on just burning a hole with that pin right through the center of that dot. And I'll aim as long as I can until I really feel my form breaking down, where my pin's moving too much. Let down, take a couple deep breaths, and start the process over. So what that's doing is just really helping you with it's an aiming drill. It's just helping you get your mind in the right spot for just continuing to recognize that pin float right in the center of that spot, or just continue to fight for the center of that spot. So again, when I'm up close, I like a small pin like this, and the reason is with my fiber, you like my prop here, so it's when my fiber comes off that spot, it's pretty noticeable. So I continue to fight for the center on that dot. This is something you can integrate also in doing longer range. Obviously, as you get further out in range, you may need a little bit bigger dot, but I like this small dot, usually all the way out to about 40 yards. I can see it good enough to where I know when my pin is off the center, and I just continue to fight for the center and fight for the center. Obviously, this dot down here is something that I'd usually integrate 60, 70, 80 yards, and that way it's at that distance my pin is about covering up the spot anyway. So it's all relative to size. A few things I want to highlight here. This is not when you're drawing your bow and holding it back for 30 seconds or a minute or a minute and a half to just practice with those muscles to keep your bow at full draw. This is not that. This is draw back, anchor. You're looking through your peep, and you're actually going through that aiming process for a longer period of time than you normally would be. So it's not your typical draw and hold. Secondly, if your stabilizer setup is needing some adjustment, this is something that might be a little bit difficult for you, assuming that your bow just doesn't balance real well, or assuming that you may be a little bit short in your draw length, a little bit long in your draw length, to where aiming is difficult. Aiming should not really be that difficult with your bow set up in an optimal situation. So if you're really fighting and your pin movement is really bad, or if you're noticing your pin does this, and it's really dropping out the bottom, or whatever the case is, maybe your float's just a really big empty float, or it does a big choppy side to side, that's something that could be a direct correlation to your stabilizer setup. Possibly too much weight up front, possibly the stabilizer length could need to be adjusted. That's something for a different set of videos, but just know that once your setup is optimal, balanced, and when you draw back, it seems almost effortless to let your pin float. And it's, again, everybody's pin's got movement, right? But what you want is you just want a smaller movement as opposed to a bigger movement, because if your movement is like this, well, you can imagine your group size is probably going to be like that, assuming you can just squeeze through a nice shot. But if your pin movement is like this, smaller, well, then your group size is going to equate to being a lot smaller. So again, start with this up close, integrated in your shot routine. As you go, you can actually just do this as a standalone exercise at further distances, where you put that dot out there at 80 yards or whatever, maybe 100 yards, and draw back and just hold on that spot. Again, get anchored, whether you shoot an index finger or a hinge or whatever you're shooting, get engaged like you would be, with the exception of just pulling through or squeezing through that shot. So always load and arrow, make sure you're pointed down in a safe direction. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and we're going to be bringing you some more tips kind of like this, somewhat philosophy, somewhat practice based. Also, if you haven't checked out the Alpha Bow Hunting Challenge, the 2017 season is about to kick off, so I hope to see you all at one of the upcoming events. That's all I've got for today. So as always, dream big, shoot straight, and we'll see you on the next video.